and get started. So hi, welcome to How to Succeed in Online Classes. Your host slash also panelists today are going to be myself, Rachel, and my coworker, Abby. And you should be able to see my screen, and you should be able to see the speaker's screen, and so the speakers will be changing depending on who's talking at the current moment. And so I'm briefly just going to go over, once again, how this works. If you have questions for any of the panelists at any times, once again, please submit them to the Q&A feature, not the chat. And please address them to who you're asking, if it has a specific audience. So for example, myself or Abby are the college advisors who we've been working virtually for a few years now. Jada and Melina are our two student representatives, our ambassadors. So excited to have them here. And Dr. Martin is our college professor who's also here. Yes, so please make sure to address your questions to whoever it best fits. And so now myself and Abby are going to give quick introductions. So hi everyone, we're Rachel and Abby. We are College Advising Corps College Point Advisors. We're here to chat with you about succeeding in virtual classes. My name is Rachel McGuire. I use she, her, hers pronouns. I graduated from UNC Chapel Hill in North Carolina in 2018, and I've been working as a virtual college advisor since then.
And hi everybody, I'm Abby. I use she, hers pronouns, and I graduated from Appalachian State University in 2017. My major was social work, and yeah, I've been advising now for 3 years, so quite some time. But yeah, it's nice to see, I guess I'm not seeing everybody, but it's nice to be here with you all. Thank you for joining.
And now we're going to go ahead and let Jada and Melina introduce themselves. But really quickly first, we just want to note that Jada and Melina were both students that we actually advised 2 years ago. So we were their college advisor. I was actually Jada's advisor, which is very exciting, in her senior year of high school, and they have just now completed their first year of college. So I will go ahead and let them take it away. Melina, why don't you go first?
Hi, I'm Alina. I use she, they pronouns, and I am an international relations and political science major and a rising sophomore at Wellesley College.
And I'm Jada Crockett. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I am a civil engineering major at the Georgia Institute of Technology.
Awesome. Thank you both so much for those introductions. And we are also joined by Dr. Marion Martin, who is a professor at North Carolina State University, and I will go ahead and let him introduce himself as well.
Hello. So yes, I am Marion Martin, and I use the pronouns he, him, his. I'm originally from Columbia, South Carolina, but did my undergraduate work in chemistry at Furman University, which is in Greenville, South Carolina. Also somehow found time to play football. From there, I went out to California to do my PhD in chemistry at Stanford University, and then did postdoc work at Caltech in Pasadena, California. And then I've been working in higher education since 2010, and have been at North Carolina State since January of 2019. I teach General Chemistry 1 and General Chemistry 2. And then I also am working to lead the diversity, equity, and inclusion effort in our department.
Wonderful. And Dr. Martin, we actually already have a really relevant question for you. So we're just going to go ahead and ask from Taylor, do you record your lectures, and do you have a problem with students recording it for themselves?
So yes, I record my lectures via Zoom. So any live meetings, I try to record those. In this time, things can happen where students are not able to attend classes, technology fails, etc. So I want to make sure that students still have access to that content at any time.
Awesome. Thank you so much for answering. And now Abby is going to give us a quick agenda walkthrough.
Yes, okay, so a look at today's webinar. So we're gonna start with Rachel and I talking. We're gonna be giving you some info on working from home and just some general tips. And then we're gonna go to Jada and Melina, who are gonna give their tips from doing online classes last semester. And then we'll end our third little section with Dr. Martin. He's gonna go through some information about teaching online classes and sort of what he expects from students. And then we're gonna take the rest of the time to basically answer questions from all of you all. So please make sure, as we said earlier, put any questions you think of in the Q&A, but we're going to have a lot of time to answer those at the end. So definitely whatever questions you have, please ask them, because we want to get them answered. Okay, yes, so this is just sort of contextualizing why we're having this presentation, which you all already know. But basically, as we know, a lot of colleges are shifting to online classes for the fall semester and the spring due to COVID. So we know that a lot of students are understandably feeling really unsure about transitioning into virtual learning. So our aim for this presentation is basically to help you feel more prepared and at ease. Even though it will be an adjustment, hopefully these tips will make you feel a little bit less nervous about it.
And so Abby and I are going to go first, and just a little bit of sort of what are our credentials. I have been working remotely for 2 years. Abby's been working remotely for 3 years, and I actually am in my 3rd day of online grad school. So we definitely have a lot of experience when it comes to working from home, which can definitely correlate to the classroom. So I'm going to go first. Some of my tips. Every day I wake up and get dressed. Waking up and get dressed honestly really helps me mentally feel like I'm ready to start my day. Even if you're just getting dressed to sit in your room and sit on Zoom and for your classes, it's really important to sort of like trick your brain to make you think like, okay, the day is starting now. Also, don't sit in bed during class. Sit at a table, a desk, or another workspace that you can work from. In order to also stop myself from taking classes in bed, I make my bed every morning because it can be a little bit tempting when you're, taking classes inside your room. Another tip is keeping your camera on during class. This can really help you focus and hold yourself accountable when it comes to paying attention, right? Now, don't feel like super stressed out like you have to have your camera on 100% of the time. If you need to use the restroom, I think it's fine if you turn it off, but turn it on when you really need to pay attention. And also minimize multitasking. It's very common to multitask. I know that a lot of us do it, right? But according to cognitive psychology, multitasking is basically impossible. Our brain really can't focus on more than one thing at a time. So just make sure that you're multitasking effectively if you're doing your homework. So a lot of times I'll listen to instrumental music instead of music that has lyrics as a way to sort of focus. And I also use the Pomodoro technique. So when studying or doing homework, or if I'm like just focusing on a task that I need to dedicate a lot of time to, which is where you work for 25 minutes straight and then take a 5-minute break. And I find that I get a lot of work done a lot faster, and I'm way more productive when I'm not trying to like multitask all the time.
Okay, so I'll go through my tips. So this is sort of similar, but have a designated workspace, ideally decluttered, and try not to work unless you're in that space. So for me, I try to only work when I'm at my desk so that other spaces in my apartment don't feel like workspaces. It kind of separates like your home life or whatever from your work life, which is nice, that separation. Takes walks outside safely. So obviously you all know, but wear your masks when you're outside, but take walks outside. It definitely helps break up the day and gets your body moving. Plan extra interaction so you don't feel isolated. So it can be isolating working from home. Just obviously you're only seeing yourself and the other people that are in your space in person. So planning extra interactions will just make you feel less isolated. And then work virtually with classmates. Even silent co-working can help you focus. So one big thing we do at College Advising Corps is we do like virtual co-working where you set up times basically just to all get together on a Zoom call or something and do your own individual work. But it's nice to be able to, I guess, sort of feel like you're with people even if you're not talking or anything. It's sort of like going to the library and all being at a study table together. You're not really talking, but it's nice to like have the human interaction there. But yeah, those are my top tips. And then just another note on decluttering. So obviously, ideally, your desk space will be decluttered. But this is just important because, or I guess these tips actually come from Dorothy from the Porter's show. But basically, decluttering clears your physical space so it's easier to partake in whatever you're trying to partake in, gives us a sense of accomplishment, and gives us time to think about what we need to do. So yeah.
And now's the time that you can ask us any questions. We're going to take 1 or 2 questions from the audience, but I did see a good question in the Q&A feature that I think Melina could speak to about if any of you did high school online, how is college online different? So Melina, if you just want to say a little bit about that, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, so I did 2 years of high school partially online, and the biggest difference between those classes and when college switched online in the spring was that professors were a lot more flexible with me when it was in the spring, because college professors in general just are incredibly more flexible than in high school because they're more invested in their work and you are able to relate to them on a more personal level. Also, I found it a lot easier for me to manage my time with with college classes, just because you have fewer assignments and your assignments, you typically have fewer assignments, and just because your assignments are something that you would work on for a much longer period of time, unlike in high school where you have like a worksheet due every 2 days or a problem set due every 2 days, something like that. But the transition wasn't as hard as I thought it would be from using my experience in high school. So definitely just take up all the study tips you used to have and you should be okay.
Thank you so much. And I think we got another good question that Abby and I can definitely answer, or anybody else if you have really good tips. Do you have any tips for when you're feeling overwhelmed? Which I think is a great question. And I think it's also very easy to feel overwhelmed when you're in your own space and you don't really have anybody around you to sort of like, you know, just ask that question when you're in class, like, hey, when's this assignment due? Or, hey, you know, what are we doing in class next week? I would say that my best tip for if I'm getting really overwhelmed and I'm like starting to like get like frustrated and just feeling like I'm not getting anything done, I'll oftentimes like just be like, I need to take a 15-minute break no matter what I'm doing. Like I need to get out of my house. I need to like put on a mask and go on a walk on the trail behind my house because I just like need to step away from my online space. And I find that when I come back, I'm a lot of times way more refreshed, way more awake, and like ready to like do what I need to do. And I also ask for help a lot from coworkers, so from classmates. I've already emailed, like it's my 3rd day of grad school and I've already emailed like 2 professors questions about the syllabus. So yeah, so my biggest step is ask for help and take a step away. But does anyone else have a tip they'd like to add? Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for asking that question. Okay, we see that we have more questions, but we're briefly, a lot of them are for students. So we're briefly going to let Melina and Jada say their tips and then they can answer your questions when they're done giving their best tips. Okay, so Jada is first.
Okay, so my biggest tip is to communicate. I found in my first semester of college that it was very hard for me to communicate with people that were sitting right next to me and with my professor who was standing in front of me every day. And what made it easier was that I actually saw these people every day. It was kind of like towards the end of the semester, it was weird for me not to see these people and be like, hey, how are you? And so like, it was like, I was made to communicate. But when you're online, it's like such an isolating experience. So you really need to make sure that if you need help, if you have a question, that you reach out. In my experience, college professors are very understanding. They want to help you. So all you have to do is reach out. I took chemistry over the summer, and my biggest support were the other students. I reached out to some other students. We have like group chats, like group me's, and we would help each other. And so make sure that you make those connections, because they will help you through your freshman year and throughout your entire college career. Also, like Abby said earlier, make sure you have a designated workspace. When I came back home in the spring, I tried to do my schoolwork in the bed for like a week and I was getting nothing done. So just separate the place where you feel the most comfortable from your schoolwork. And not only because like when you're sitting in the bed, you won't get any work done, but also like when you're in bed, when you're in your room, you want to have a space where you feel calm and like free. And if you're doing your work in your bed, you're bringing stress into your bed. And also like Rachel just talked about, you have to take breaks. It's really easy when you're sitting at a desk in front of your computer all day to just sit there all day. I made this mistake a lot in the summer, and it's really draining. If you say that you take one assignment and then you're going to take a break, when you come back to do your next assignment, you just feel so much better rather than just putting so much work on yourself. Your mental health is just as important as your academic success and your physical health. So make sure that you really take care of it, especially with online learning.
Yes, thank you so much for those great tips, Jada. Okay, and now I'm going to give it to Melina.
Okay, so my first tip harps on what Rachel and Jada said, but it really is just this important. You need to change your clothes when you wake up in the morning. I had 8:30s every single day for my entire freshman year, and if I were to wear my pajamas to class, even during Zoom school, I would fall back asleep immediately and sleep through my next class. Like, even if you change into other pajamas, it will make it 100 times easier for you to get your work done. And it also makes it easier if you make your bed, because then it will just look less inviting, and then you won't crawl back in it as soon as your first class is over. It completely changed my ability to actually work early in the morning. My next is that if you are going to be staying home for this upcoming semester and doing your classes where you're currently living, you really need to sit down with whoever you're going to be living with and just explain to them what your semester is going to be like and what you need to make it work for you. What I did is I sat down with my mom, who is who I live with, and we made a door sign. And it said when I'm going to be working in classes, when I'm going to be in other Zoom meetings, when I'm studying and when I'm taking a test, and when I'm free to be able to help her. So that way she knows exactly what I'm doing and why I can't be working at other things around the house or taking care of like the dogs or a task for someone else in my family members. If you sit down and set these boundaries as soon as possible, it'll make it a lot easier for you to keep up with everything else you need, like at home, but also with school, and it'll help you be a lot more successful. My third tip is to schedule everything that you need to do, but with flexibility. I found that when I was doing my online classes, it was a lot harder for me to get all of the tasks that I wanted to do done in one day. And for the first month or two, I really beat myself up over it because I thought that I should be more productive and I should be able to accomplish more things. But you really need to be kind to yourself in this insane time and allow yourself to push things off for another day, or to take a longer break, or to just not work if you don't have to. Because if you don't, and you are constantly working and you are constantly forcing yourself to stay up to finish one last problem set or one last essay, you're going to burn out, and it is not going to be healthy. My fourth is that you need to reach out to your professors and your TAs, your advisors, and your deans if you need them. They are your absolute biggest asset. I feel like I probably annoyed my dean a lot in college because I was in her office every single month my first semester, and I had 3 different Zoom meetings with her my second. I was there all of the time. And if you can, make your meetings early, just even to say hi. Stop into an office hours, send an email. Developing that relationship will make it so much more easy for you to ask questions and to ask for help in the future. Because even if you think that you're not going to need anything, it's just better to have it just in case. My fifth is to make time for social things. I figured out that when I'm working on something at home and online, it's really easy for me to not check my phone for like 6 or 7 hours at a time if I get into like a really good groove. So then I just ignored text messages and phone calls, and I would never talk to any of my friends. And I felt really lonely after the first month of doing that. So like set a reminder to check your text or to pick up a FaceTime call with your friends, because if not, you're just gonna be sitting in your room doing Zoom calls, and you're not gonna be as happy as you could be. And then my last tip, and the one that took me the longest to figure out, is that everyone struggles in college. You just might not be able to see it when you're all online. College is a fantastic place, and it is something that I love, and it makes me so happy. But when you are working on an essay for 6 hours straight, you just feel like you are the only one struggling in that moment. But I promise you, you're not. people are just really good at hiding things and no one wants to talk about it sometimes. So you might be struggling, but everyone else is too, and you're not alone. With that being said, though, if you are struggling, you should talk to your professors and your TAs and your advisors and your deans. They will help you out. They will give you an extension or help you work through it, or just give you a pep talk when you need it. And they will know when you are really struggling and you need even more help. For me, I was struggling a lot in my second semester, and that's how I figured out that I had a learning disability. So like, if you really need to reach out to your connections, so that way they know that you're struggling and they can see if you're struggling too much and if you need more help. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Melina. Those were amazing tips. And we have a couple of great questions for you both. So the first question is, students, do you ever study in the dining hall or rent textbooks from the library?
Okay, so I do not study in the dining hall, but that's because of the type of learner I am. The dining halls are usually like very social places, and that's where a lot of people thrive. So I have friends that actually thrive in those types of environments, but I myself prefer to study in like a quiet room in the library. But it's really important to know like what type of learner you are to know like where you thrive when you study. As far as renting textbooks from the library, I've never done it. um with all the great technology that we have nowadays, most of the library's resources are uploaded online. And most of my textbooks that I get, I found that they've been cheaper to get on Amazon if I absolutely have to rent them. And actually, a lot of the older books are just available in PDF form online. You just have to do a little search.
Yes, perfect. Thank you so much. And I'm going to second that. I also rented my textbooks through Amazon or Chegg, Cheggg, when I was in college. And okay, two more questions that are kind of similar. So I will ask them back to back. So students, what are your favorite apps to keep organized during the school year? And then a second question is, how do you formulate study groups in a virtual format? Virtually, I feel like this can be difficult. And so I feel like some of these apps might cross over.
Okay, so I'm a purist. My favorite app for keeping organized during the school year is Google Calendar. At my school, we have a really big culture around it. We all have color-coded Google Calendars, so we have everything there. But I also use the reminders app on my phone a lot, just in case I think of anything when I'm walking around. And I have a planner. Mine is on my iPad because I use that for school. But if you have any notebook that you love, keep a detailed planner. It will be your best friend, and it will be so much easier to figure out exactly what you need to do than a lot of the apps on your phone. Just because sometimes the apps are really hard to configure around the weird schedules that colleges have.
Okay, to add on to that, okay, so there's this app that I started using at the beginning of my college career called Shovel, and I found that it was like very cool. It keeps track of all of your classes, your homework, your exams, and kind of just keeps you on track. I didn't like how it was formatted, and so I actually have a planner on my iPad as well. And the planner that I use is called Passion Planner, and if you go on their website, you can actually download their PDFs, and I just use that on my iPad. And I know nobody asks about this, but something I love to do is like when I get my syllabi, I go into Excel and I like put all the assignments in and like use equations to like weigh them together so that I can make sure that I'm always keeping up with my grade. Um, and as far as formulating study groups in a virtual format, um, so online, I know like in the platform that we use, we have something called Piazza, and whatever platform you use, just like whatever you use to like chat with each other, like to ask like community questions. If nobody has done it before you, go create a group me for that class and just post the link on that forum. A lot of people will join, and that will be a great way to like have a big class group for you all, and then you from there you can kind of like figure out what kind of people that you would like to study with. And that's how I actually do it when there are in-person classes. So yeah.
Yeah, I have a really similar tip. My thing is, it's really similar to what I do in in-person classes. I will just look around the room or the Zoom call and I will see who looks approachable enough to me to where I am comfortable private messaging them on Zoom and asking if they want to help me make a group chat for the class. That is my tip. I just make a group me or an iMessage chat and I add as many people as possible. And then eventually everyone will split up into their own study groups as the time goes on. But then you will have a set amount of people who will actually help you with all of this problem.
Oh, yes, thank you both so much. I will say that along with GroupMe, I know that WhatsApp is another common app that sometimes like students use. So either one. And we'll do one question before we move on to our Q&A with Dr. Marion Martin. So students, how do you balance a job with online classes? If either of you have ever worked or had a job like in college. If not, I can answer this.
I've never experienced it.
I've only worked with in-person classes, so it's to you, Rachel.
Absolutely. Well, I'm doing that right now. I currently have this job and I'm a grad student. So even though I've only been doing this for 3 days, I've been working virtually for long enough that I feel comfortable answering this. So I would say that you need to have a schedule in whatever way works best for you, whether or not that's on your iPhone, on a physical planner, downloading the virtual passion planner, using Google Calendar. It doesn't matter like what works best for you, and you might have to try a couple different things to figure it out. I work best when I have a physical planner. So here is my 2020-2021 planner, and I have to write all down like all of my classes and all of my like shifts, right? So I also did work in undergrad. I worked at Starbucks, and so I did the same thing with in-person classes. And I like to use highlighters to color code. So I would color code my classes, and then I'd color code my job. As for balancing a job, I recommend not working more than 12 to 15 hours a week, even in the virtual space, right? Because even if in the virtual space, maybe it feels like you have more free time, but you need to have enough time to schedule in not only time for classes, but also time for studying and time for taking breaks. Because if you don't schedule in time for taking breaks and resting and relaxing and whatever else you like to do, watching TV, whatever, then you're going to get really burned out really quickly. And we have more questions for students, and we are going to answer those right after we hear from Dr. Martin. So we are going to be hearing from a professor now, and he's going to give us some insight from teaching virtual classes. So I think, Dr. Martin, if you have anything that you would like to say to the students at large, please feel free to do so. And also, we mostly want to hear from you, like, what are your expectations from students in a virtual setting? And how do you recommend students prepare for virtual classes?
All right, great. So first of all, you guys have already gotten a lot of great advice about being prepared for learning virtually. And a lot of it has to do with building a rhythm and building a routine around the courses. So I'm going to focus a little bit here more on course structure. And a lot of what I'm going to say initially has very little to do with course content and more getting prepared for the semester. So the first thing in terms of being successful and getting prepared for your virtual class is to read the syllabus, and to read the syllabus and then reread the syllabus and identify what questions might be coming up for you. Because the syllabus, that's going to be the contract that you're going to use for the semester. So you really want to understand how the course is set up, how the grades are set up, when can you access the professor, when can you access the TAs. And so really reviewing that syllabus is going to be key to being successful in the course. You also want to review the schedule. If there is a schedule in that syllabus, go ahead and start putting down those dates, those due dates for homework, due dates for projects, due dates for exams, just so you can really start mapping things out. You don't want something popping up on you due the next day, right? We want to have a plan from the beginning. And then depending on where you're going to school, you want to familiarize yourself with the course website. So in this virtual setting, depending on how your professor decides to deliver the content, you may be expected to watch videos or things of that nature in the course website. And so you want to be able to navigate that effectively. And those are things to be doing outside of the course content. And then with the course content, you want to try to stay current with the material. That's going to help you be more effective. If you say attend office hours, if you're getting tutoring, you can identify what you're having trouble with from the get-go versus the day before the test, the night before the test. If I get an email then, there's not much I can do for you at that point. So we want to make sure we're identifying what's been challenging as early as possible. And then one of the things that we got comments on at State was that students felt like they needed or really missed community when we went virtually. So in the spring, when my classes went online, I made everything asynchronous, which meant that they could watch the videos and do the homework whenever they wanted to. And then I had office hours when they could just stop by during our normal class time. And again, I had about 500 students and about 5 came a week. So I wasn't getting the same interaction, and then the students weren't getting the same interaction. And so what I've set up this semester is for them to watch some videos on their own, but then we also meet face-to-face 3 days a week where they practice problem solving. So it's a little bit of a mix, provides us some flexibility. I mean, my Zoom might go out, my internet might go out, and we would lose a class today. So we're trying to provide some flexibility, but also give them an opportunity for consistent interaction. And then as people have talked about with the GroupMe, I've had students use Discord, just trying to build some networks to be able to study with throughout the semester. I think that's important in terms of preparing for the virtual class.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Those were really awesome tips. And we do have a couple of questions before we jump into our larger Q&A. So do you have set lecture times with mandatory attendance, or can students watch the lectures, do their homework, etc., whenever, so long as they keep their grades up? Which I think you sort of just answered, but just going into that a little bit more.
Right. So as I mentioned, with my classes, I can talk a little bit about my classes. My classes are, each section has about 240 students in it, and it's the first semester of general chemistry. And the way I've set it up is that we meet Monday, Wednesday, Friday for them to practice solving problems, but most of the content is delivered online. And the reason why I've set that up again is just to provide students an opportunity to interact with me and their classmates. If again, with technology or work or other responsibilities that students might have, if they can't attend that Monday, Wednesday, Friday, then there are mechanisms for them to get credit. I'm not going to penalize them if they can't come Monday, Wednesday, Friday, but that is the ideal circumstance. And that just, again, helps them stay connected to community, helps them stay on top of the material. Sometimes when we think, okay, I can manage this course load on my own without a little bit of extra motivation, whereas us meeting 3 times a week with some small assignments due associated with that, that's going to encourage students to keep up with the material. And then we also know from education research and pedagogy, we learn better when we're taking things as small chunks versus, all right, I'm going to learn chapter 1 Friday, and then the next Friday I try to learn chapter 2. That's just not going to be an effective way to learn the material and in a sustained way.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for that. And a couple other questions. So Dr. Martin, do professors email their syllabus before classes start, or do they give them out on the first day of class?
So it just depends. So I was working with a learning specialist this summer, and what she recommended was sending it out early. So I've started sending that out early so that students can begin looking over that. So the first day of class, they can ask any questions before we get going. At State, students can change classes for that first week. So you have people coming in and out, and so that first week is a little bit touch and go, but I try to get that information out as early as possible so that students can review it. But most universities expect you to at least have it prepared for that first day of class.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And then also, what are office hours like in the virtual space? How are they different or the same as your office hours in person?
The office hours, I think philosophically they're the same. I want to have students have an opportunity to stop by with questions. I know going in and talking to a faculty member may seem intimidating. So, one thing that students can do is to try to find some other people to drop in on that Zoom call at the same time. You guys can pool questions that you have, and then you're not having to come in and talk one-on-one. You've got a group to ask those questions. But we have set that time up for people to come in and get help with that content. And again, as I mentioned, keeping up with the material is important. If you know what you're having trouble with, then those office hours are going to be much more effective. If I have a student come in and say, "Can you explain lecture 2 to me?" That's not going to be an effective use of either of our time. And so you want to have some things prepared when you go in, and even if the first time it's, where do I find the periodic table in the course management system, just to get the conversation started. That's important. And I say, really try to go before you have an issue, right? Because if you're waiting till you're stressed to come and meet with the TA or the professor, that's just going to make it more difficult. Start off week 1, stop in for 5 minutes. So the way mine are set up is I have these windows that students can drop in, and they're Zoom calls. I just log in on Zoom and I sit and I wait for folks to stop in. If nobody comes, then I just kind of prepare other materials for class. But I'm there, and as soon as they drop in, they're my priority. We talk through whatever questions they may have, and then they can leave, right? So it's just like if I have my office door open, they can walk in and ask questions and then leave. And so that's how I've set up those office hours. And again, get in early so that when you really need that support, you're already comfortable with the mechanism of getting help, and then you can focus in on whatever content issue you might have.
Yeah, and I love what you said about students just dropping by at the beginning for 5 minutes to introduce themselves. So yeah, definitely don't feel like if you're a student, you need to have a question to go and introduce yourself, especially in those big 500-person classes. It can be nice just to introduce yourself to the professor. And another question for you, Dr. Martin, have you implemented more collaborative projects since transitioning to online learning?
So that's a great question. That's something that I have not implemented. So actually in the last fall, when I taught this course, we did have a group project, but it was centered around building a physical object and using some particular resources on campus. And I just felt like trying to manage that in the pandemic was going to be more difficult than helpful. So I haven't instituted that in this particular case. But I have shifted my grading a little bit in terms of the weighting of exams and other things to try to account for the fact that we are in a little bit of a different learning environment and to give students more motivation to try to keep up with the material on a regular basis.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So as we all know, virtual learning will be an adjustment, but it is doable. And now we are just going to have Q&A. So we're going to answer all the questions in the chat. And now this is a great time, if you have any questions to ask any of us, please feel free to do so. So once again, submit your questions to the Q&A feature, not the chat. I'm going to stop screen sharing just because we do not need to see the presentation right now. And we've got some great questions already from students. So I think that this question can really be answered by you, Dr. Martin, or by you, Jada and Melina. What do you suggest students do during the first few weeks of class to prepare themselves for the rest of the semester?
So what I do is, as soon as you get a syllabus, so it might be like a few days before classes start, or it might be on the first day of classes, I go through and I make note of every single deadline because I'm really bad about remembering when they are. Also, you should check and see what everything is weighted in your class, like essays and homework assignments, just so you know what you're working with. Also, so you know if your midterm's weighted 50% and your final's only weighted 10, you know to study more for the midterm, which is something I actually had to do. And another thing that I do is, since the first few weeks of classes are a little bit of a struggle trying to get used to everything, because you also have to get used to actually being in college, I try and set aside like specific blocks of time, more so than I do usually, where I just work on every single small assignment due within the first month or two as fast as possible. So I'll do any of the minor readings for the upcoming classes, or I'll try and read ahead for the required readings. Um, and then also, if there's like a big final project, I'll just think on it a little bit to see if I have any major ideas or if I have any questions, especially because some of the bigger projects, especially if you're not taking intro classes, will take you several weeks. It's unfortunate.
Kind of jumping on that, as far as when you get your syllabi, what I do once I get all of my syllabi is I make a master assignment sheet. So it's an assignment sheet for all the classes that I have that semester, and they're in order. I do it by month. So every day, what I do is I take that assignment sheet. I make sure all the things that I have on that day is completed. And I literally put everything on the assignment sheet. So if I have to do readings, my readings are on there. If an exam is due, I have that on there. When I want to study on it for exam, it's on there. I make sure that I have everything for the rest of the semester pretty much set up. So like every day when I go to do work, I know exactly like what I need to do. And I think that's, for me, it's very helpful, because once you get down to crunch time, and you get to where you have all of your exams in 1 week, but you still have homework to do, it's nice to like have everything that you need to do in one place.
Yeah, I mean, they're giving you great advice. I mean, I think what they're telling you is that you shouldn't have any surprises, right? You should not show up one day and think, oh, I have a test today. That is easily avoidable based on the information provided in the syllabus. Now, you have to work hard and stay on top of these things, but you should be able to stay aware of things that are coming.
Okay. I don't know if I think Rachel's screen just went away from me. Oh, she's back.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. My internet connection is, I'm in grad school online. My roommates are a teacher at a local school online. We're all on the internet all the time. So also, this is a good prep bees too. If everyone's using your internet connection, sometimes Zoom will just boot you off and then you have to get back in. One tip about that is that sometimes professors have their virtual Zoom classes set up so that they have to admit individually each student in the waiting room. So there's like a waiting room period in Zoom. And that's I would assume, to make sure that, nobody else except for their students are getting into the class, right? If you do happen to be kicked off and then are trying to re-enter, you will have to be readmitted from the waiting room to the Zoom room chat. So it is always a good idea, if possible, to like have a friend's phone number in that class, or be joining the group chat or the WhatsApp or group me, anything like that, so that way you can type in like, hey, Zoom just kicked me out and now I can't get back in, and the professor's in the middle of teaching and they don't notice that I'm in the waiting room. Can one of you in the class ask them to admit me? It's already happened twice and I've only had 4 classes. So I definitely think that is a good idea. But yes, Abby, take it away. Ask another question. We've got a lot of good ones.
We do. Okay, so our next question is not directed towards anyone specific, but it says, any tips on how to get back into the routine of working before the school year starts, since we've had so much free time these past few months? Which is a great question, because that can be tough to do.
For me, the hardest part of going back for a semester is waking up early enough. So because I, for some reason, have had 8:30s every single semester of college so far. I think I'm the only person that I know that's ever done that. So try and figure out what time you might need to wake up for your classes, and start practicing it, like even if it's just a couple days a week. Also, what I do is, as soon as classes actually start, or as soon as I have assignments that I need to complete, I will set aside blocks of the day, like from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m. or something like that, where all I do is I work on one class or two classes, and also set aside more time than you think you need to complete an assignment. Because if you think you can do a problem set in like 4 or 5 hours, the first few weeks it will take you 6 or 7 hours, just because you are not used to it anymore. So definitely allow yourself more time to complete anything the first few weeks. And it's kind of like riding a bike, except it takes a lot longer to remember how to do it.
Yes, great advice. Thank you so much for that, Melina. This is a question for Dr. Martin. Do you have virtual labs, and how do virtual labs work?
Yeah, so our general chemistry labs, because we have such large number of students, they're not meeting face to face. Instead, students are being provided with data and things like that that they're having to analyze and then submit their answers to the lab. So yes, we are using virtual labs, and then for the larger classes. But for our majors classes, which are typically smaller classes, those are still meeting face to face on a hybrid schedule with reduced capacities, just to give students an opportunity to practice the science of chemistry. It's unfortunate that's, I mean, a virtual lab is a bit of a misnomer, but you know, that's what we have to do to keep everyone safe.
Thank you. Another question, what are some good websites that y'all use to supplement textbooks and lectures when studying? So any good website tips for studying, doing homework?
In my experience, a lot of the textbooks will have like corresponding websites that are useful. Chegg is useful, but be careful with that. Academic um honesty is like important, but I found Chegg really important to me when I was taking linear algebra, because the professors weren't all that great and I needed like help with the process of my homework assignments and like the material itself. And Chegg can be really good about walking you through problems, but just be careful with it.
Yeah, I really like you. Oh, sorry, Rachel, go ahead.
Oh no, you are totally fine. I was just going to give it also a brief explanation on Chegg for students who may or may not know what that is. You can use Chegg as a textbook rental service, but then they also have another online component of like students can post questions and answers, and there's also study tips and like study sort of like sets, right, Jada? Okay, I've never used it personally. I know that a lot of it's similar to Amazon in that it has cheap textbook rentals. But what Jada was saying about academic honesty and academic dishonesty is please be careful. I do know that universities have definitely cracked down on students posting questions and answers of their exams onto Chegg. And if a university contacts Chegg, Chegg has to give them all of the accounts that are affiliated of students that are affiliated with that university to the university. So once again, like Jada was saying, just be careful. Don't use it to cheat, because it could come back to bite you. So, you know, but of course, as Jada said, it can be helpful for studying and for using textbooks. So I just wanted to give that disclaimer about using Chegg, which is spelled Chegg.
Yeah, definitely second the caution on Chegg. So it is great. I also have used Chegg to help me work through a couple practice problems. I really like, especially for calculus classes and any general STEM class, a lot of professors will have YouTube channels from different schools. Those are usually pretty helpful, and they usually have really great practice problems if you don't understand something. So if you just search whatever topic you're working on, there's usually hundreds of videos on it. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo that. So you, MIT and some of these places, they have open course share where you can essentially take their courses online. So you can supplement your class videos with those. If you're in introductory level courses, typically Khan Academy is another good resource at the introductory level. Once you start getting a little bit more advanced, they don't always have the same coverage or depth of the concepts, but it can be a good starting place for just developing some rudimentary understanding of the content. And then yes, please be careful with Chegg, period.
Thank you so much. Wise advice. A question for everybody. Have you all done things such as career development or networking in a virtual format? How's that worked?
So I have yet to do it, but I am going to be doing something in September with an organization that supports Black chemists and chemical engineers. They're setting up a virtual fair where students will be able to drop by, and we'll set up a Zoom and a schedule for people to be able to come in and ask questions. So that's one of the things that we'll be doing. And then I know on our campus, they have it to where you can set up to meet with career advisors from time to time. And so that's another place where you can be dropping in and getting that support.
And I would say just take advantage of any Zoom, webinar, lecture series that your university is going to put on, because your universities are very used to putting on a lot of student events and bringing in guest lectures and guest speakers to campus. And I am sure that a lot of those events are going to be online, on virtual this year. And you can definitely use those as spaces for professional development. I'm sure that you could find a list of these types of things in your student center, or if you don't know where to find that, you can call your student center, like the help desk, and they can give you a list of stuff like that. Okay, another question. When choosing classes, is it better to choose a class that does not have Zoom meetings but designated deadlines, so more like a traditional online class format that's asynchronous, or is it better to have meetings with professors and other students, so the synchronous component?
Okay, so I prefer asynchronous classes because I like to move on my own pace and be able to like determine when I do things. But I found when I took chemistry this summer that having the synchronous class really helped because she had an asynchronous concept where she actually provided the lectures to us the night before, and in class we would work through problems, and I really enjoyed that because when you're working through these problems, it's very nice to have your professor there to ask questions right on the spot. So I would like most definitely say it depends on the class.
I think my recommendation is for first year students to try to have more synchronous, just because you're adjusting to a lot of change and difference, and trying to figure out how to do these things online on your own versus having a community to be doing that with, I think can have a tremendous impact on your success.
Yes, I would absolutely agree. I think that's great advice. A question for Jada or Melina, if you've taken summer courses, what is the maximum amount of summer classes that you were comfortable taking?
Okay, so I just got out of my summer semester and I took 4 classes. It was a total of 14 credit hours. I would probably never do it again, but it was a great experience. And one thing that like most colleges have is that all of your classes are not going to be the full summer. You have the first half of your summer, the second half of your summer, you have full summer classes, you have classes, and so that might have a lot of impact on your decision. Full semester classes and one late summer class, and I was actually pretty comfortable with it because I was taking a math, chemistry, and then 2 humanities, and so the fact that I kept it balanced like that, I think made it better. But make sure that you're very careful because it's a lot of information in a little bit of time.
I definitely agree with that. I also took a summer class. I took one class. It was a 7-week calculus class. Definitely, I say that a shorter term, like 6 to 8 weeks, I would do at max like 2 or 3 classes. I did one, and I still had plenty of time to like do anything else I wanted to do. But if I did 2, I would have felt like it was more of a challenge. though just like make sure you do research your professors a lot. Summer professors, it is more important that they are very, very good because you're going through, like Jada said, so much information in such a short amount of time. Yeah.
All right, and Jada, do you happen to have a template for the assignment sheet that you create? Or did you find that online, or did you make that up yourself?
I actually found a YouTube video on how to get, but if I can share my screen, I can show them an example of last for me.
Yes, I believe you should have screen sharing capabilities as a panelist, but if not, please let us know. And while you are getting that set up, I do have, I think, one more question that would be important for Dr. Martin. I know that you briefly mentioned something about adjusting your grading policies due to the upcoming semester, or something about grades or grading. Do you just mind elaborating on that? And like, how is grading for you going to be different?
Right. So typically this course is more exam heavy in terms of the weighting of the course. And with moving to online, there's also been questions about the integrity of exams. And one of the reasons why people cheat is because they are anxious about their grades. And if your exams have a high weight, they're going to be more anxious and more likely to cheat. So by shifting to other things that have higher weighting and less, that they call them more formative assessment. So there's not as much weight on whether or not you get something right or wrong, but more weighted on trying. So trying to learn the material, because ultimately that's going to help you learn the material. If you're trying to learn the material, we want to reward those behaviors versus punishing failure. And so that's why we have discussed in our department shifting to less exam heavy, and then introducing, for example, these small assignments that they do regularly to help them keep up with the material. And worst case scenario, if we end up having to be remote learning again, then we've already created this assignment routine that can be maintained in that space with little change, versus having to do what we did in the spring, which is kind of try to pull everything together in a moment, and with very little experience doing that. So everyone was struggling, the faculty members, the students, the TAs, everybody's trying to figure out what's going on. And so we're trying to create something that would be easy to transition to if there was an outbreak or something like that on campus.
Thank you. That is really insightful and also makes a lot of sense when you say it like that. And Jada, if you are ready to share with us sort of how you created your assignment sheet, I think that would be a good time. Yeah.
Okay, so here is my first, wait, can you guys hear me? Okay, so this was my first semester at Tech. No, it wasn't. This was spring 20, and the way I set it up, basically, I have 4 columns. In the first column, I do day of the month. So the 6th, 7th, 8th actual day. And then I put the day of the week next to it, so I know that I would have something to do on Monday the 6th in January. At the bottom you see the tabs with the months on them. And then I keep the subject here so that I know when I go to my assignment, I know exactly what I have. So when I look at reading 1.1 to 1.8, I'm not trying any of the other classes. And then I just make sure I put all of my assignments here. So I actually changed it for this summer. I don't put the lecture titles anymore. My lecture, my reading, my homework, and what I found was very important was like for my quizzes, I would make sure that I went in and I said that I was going to study and what I was going to study on that particular day. It was just as simple as that. And I do it for every month. Once I get all of my assignment sheets, even down to my last finals and all of that studying.
That's really awesome. Thank you so much for sharing this. I think
No
it's
problem.
a really great way to format sort of like your calendar. Okay, and I know that we're right at 7, so we are going to be wrapping up. Do any of you have one last piece of advice that you would like to impart to the incoming first years into college, which I know in an unusual, unprecedented, unexpected time?
I guess one thing that I wanted to talk a little bit about, and I forgot, was just about using Zoom in the class setting. And so again, reading the syllabus to see what your expectations are for Zoom. Should you have the video on, not have the video on, mute, unmute. So in my class, with the large class section, um, we encourage people to choose what they're going to do. Everyone's going to be muted, but you can have your video on or off because it's so many people. But when it comes to office hours, or we have what we would call recitation, where you have smaller groups of people and doing problem solving in groups, we encourage people to have their cameras on and unmute so they can communicate with each other. And that's also going to be another opportunity to build community within the class. Because you're seeing each other's faces, you're hopefully laughing at their jokes, not at their jokes, with them. But just, again, trying to build that community. And so just being aware of what you're being expected to do from the syllabus perspective, and really trying to take hold of that in the class.
I just want to say again, make sure that you are taking care of your mental health. It's very important, especially like with us being secluded and not having as many social interactions. It gets hard, but make sure you're taking care of yourself.
Mine's pretty similar to Jada's. It's practice radical kindness. It's both to you, like allow yourself to break, allow yourself to take a nap after your morning class, allow yourself to skip your homework for the day if you really need to, but also be kind to the people that you encounter in your classes, especially professors, because a lot of professors have never imagined teaching online before the pandemic hit, and they are not enjoying it at all. And they are doing their absolute best. So please be kind to your professors and your TAs. But yeah, so take care of yourselves and be kind. That's mine.
Thank you so much to all 3 of you. Amazing advice, and love that we're ending on that concept of radical kindness and taking care of yourself in these times. Thank everyone for tuning in. That is all the content that we have scheduled for you. Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much. And it was really lovely having this for you. If you have any more questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I'm sure that myself and Abby will be around for a few more minutes. But this panel is now officially over. Thank you all for attending, and best of luck in starting this year. I know you all are going to do awesome.